Okay, we're looking at rationalizing the denominator. So rationalize means, so we're looking at rationalizing the denominator. Rationalize means we're going to make it rational, right? So if it's irrational, then we have to fix it. So if you remember, the irrational numbers often come from a square root, and we call that sign a radical. So a radical sign cannot be left in the denominator. Okay, so that's a square root. Square root. So if you see any square roots in the denominator, we have to get rid of them, and I'm going to show you how. So to get rid of the radical in the denominator, multiply by the numerator and the multiply the numerator and the denominator by the radical that's in the denominator. So you're multiplying by that radical. Whatever square root's in the bottom, you multiply, and then always simplify. So let's take a look at this first one here. So we have 7 over square root 2, 7 over radical 2. So we have a radical in the bottom. We need to get rid of it. So we're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by radical 2. Because when you do that, really what you're doing is multiplying by 1, because radical 2 over radical 2 equals 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. So on the top, 7 radical 2 is just 7 radical 2. You can't multiply them because the 7 is inside, the 2 is outside the square root. So those do not get multiplied together. On the bottom, the 2's are both inside the square root, so we can multiply those together. And 2 times 2 is obviously 4. But we're not allowed to keep that radical in the bottom, right? So, but what is the square root of 4? It's just regular 2. So the top comes along, we have 7 radical 2 over 2. And from here, you would look at it and try to ask yourself, can I simplify these numbers, the 7 and the 2 outside the square root? The 2 inside the square root, he's done because there's no more square root on the bottom, so he's not going to simplify. There might be a chance to simplify the 7 and the 2, but in this case, 7 over 2 stays 7 over 2. Okay, so check out the next one there. So 5 over radical 3. Again, we want to multiply by radical 3 on the top and the bottom. So multiply by radical 3 by radical 3. Whatever is there, you want to multiply by it. So on the top, we have 5 radical 3. Those can't get multiplied because they're different. One's inside, one's outside the square root. On the bottom, we have radical 3 times radical 3, so radical 9. So then notice the square root of 9 is just regular 3. So I have 5 radical 3 over 3. Now I'm finished because, again, I can't simplify the 5 and the 3. So just leave it alone. It stays what it is. Okay, so this radical 3 over radical 5. It's interesting. We have a radical on top to begin with, but that's okay. You don't care about the radical on top. You care about the radical on the bottom. So we're going to have radical 5 will get multiplied on top and bottom. Okay, so on the bottom, I want you to take a little bit of a shortcut here. Radical 5 times radical 5 would be radical 25, but that's just going to give you regular 5, right? So whenever you see the multiplying by the same radical like that, just skip to canceling out the radicals, essentially. It just gives you 1, 5. On the top, both the 3 and the 5 are inside the square root, so I will multiply those together because they're both inside. Insides multiply with insides, outsides with outsides. Okay, so there. Now I'm done again because I can't simplify the 15 over 5 because the 15 is inside the square root and the 5 is not. So that's it. Nothing else to do, nothing to simplify. Okay, let's check out this one. So 8 over radical 2. So multiply by radical 2 on the bottom, multiply by radical 2 on the top. So we have 8 radical 2 on the top. On the bottom, I'm going to have regular 2, right? Because this would be radical 4. Radical 4 would give me 2. So skip the radical 4 and just jump right to that. Okay, so now the rest of them, we didn't have anything to simplify, but if we look at these guys, 8 over 2, that's just 4. So the 8 over 2 gives me 4. The radical 2 stays there, and there I'm done. So since there's not another radical in the bottom to cancel out the radical 2, it's just going to stay there. So that's it for that one. Let's see about this next one. So I have a radical 2 in the bottom, a radical 5 on top, but I don't care about that. Don't worry about it. So multiplied by radical 2, multiplied by radical 2. Okay. On the top, the inside numbers will get multiplied with inside numbers. So 5 with the 2. The 4 doesn't have anybody to multiply, so he's just going to come along. So 4 radical 5 times 2 is 10. So 4 radical 10 over, on the bottom, what am I going to get? I'm going to get radical 4, which gives me regular 2. Then check our numbers. There's not another radical, so we can't simplify the radical 10. But look at the 4 with the 2. Those guys can simplify. 4 divided by 2 is just 2. Keep the radical 10. And that's it. All right, I'll do this one more with you. So I've got a radical 5 in the bottom. I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by radical 5 times by radical 5. So I have 2 radical 5 times 3, 15. Over the bottom, 5 times 5, 25, square root, regular 5. Okay, now in these cases it might be tempting to simplify with the 15 and the 5, but we can't do that. We can't do that because the 15 is inside the square root and the 5 is not. So the only things we might have a chance to simplify would be the 5 with the 2. But since 5 and 2 can't simplify, there's nothing to do with it, and there's your answer. So leave it alone. You're done. Okay? So finish up the other page of this, and if you got questions, make sure you send me an email and let me know.